Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message.
According to their website, New Community Project is a small nonprofit organization with a big goal to change the world. And they do just that. One person, one family, one community at a time, challenging all of us to better understand the world, to empower women, girls, and vulnerable communities to have a chance for a decent life, and by offering resources so that we might learn to live more gently upon this earth. David Radcliff is familiar to many of you. He is the director and founder of this amazing organization. I think it's not so much an organization as it is a movement. He is passionate, tireless, interesting, and most of all, committed to living out his calling, I think more than any other person that I have ever known. And so it's a real honor to have you here this morning, David, as our guest preacher. If you'd like to learn more about the work of the New Community Project, David will be offering a special spiritual formation time following the worship service, and his session will be right over there in the East Room. And now I invite us into a spirit of worship as the light of peace is brought in.
It's great to be with you this morning. It's been a few years. I hope you've been well, which is no small thing to wish given what we've been through since I saw you last. From COVID to climate to political confrontations, we have been through the ringer. And like any good ringer, it has brought a rendering, separating things out, showing what is what, who is who, and the work we have to do. I know you've been doing your work. Someone actually ratted you out with an online review, writing something to the effect of, they may be a more mature congregation, but they're far from conservative. I think they meant it as a compliment. I'm not sure. Well, thank you for who you are and for what you do. We're trying to do our work at New Community Project, our small nonprofit with the big goal to change the world, just like you. Actually, this year is our 20th anniversary. Who would have thought, honestly? Actually, you did, now that I think about it. 20 years ago, right about now, campus minister Debbie Roberts invited me to come out for the baccalaureates, to be the baccalaureate speaker at the ULV graduation. At that point, I was about 3 months away from concluding my work with the General Board of the Church of the Brethren, and was trying to figure out what was going to be next. And some of you took the time to meet with me to hash over the possibilities. And out of that meeting and a couple of others like it around the country, New Community Project emerged. With Matt Boyer from your congregation as part of our original board as our youth representative. You were a midwife for us, midwifing the birthing of our small but mighty enterprise. We haven't looked back. Thank you. And we haven't run out of things to do in our three main program areas. One, taking better care of God's creation. We are making a fine mess of an otherwise fine planet. Seeking fairness for people, especially women and girls around the world, Native communities in the Americas, and marginalized people in our own hometowns. And effecting change in us, what we call experiential learning. Putting us in the position to see our world and ourselves differently and letting that take us where it will. That's kind of our methodology, you might say. I got an email a couple of weeks back with the subject line, Anna from Denali. I knew right away who it was. A young woman from Virginia who'd come along with a friend of hers on our Denali Kenai Fjords learning tour summer before last. She wrote, "I just wanted to reach out and let you know how much that trip changed my life. It made me realize how important taking care of our earth was to me, and that I wanted to use my life and my career to make a difference. I'm now at Virginia Tech. I'm majoring in green engineering because I know how urgent climate change is, thanks to that trip to Alaska and what I saw there. This summer, I want to do something more meaningful than my usual job making pizza at the Italian restaurant. I'm challenged and excited to address climate change and its urgency. I just wondered what ideas you might have for me." Well, we lined it up for her to spend the summer between our sustainable living centers in Virginia and Vermont. That's what Anna's going to be doing. We go for the jugular, trying to deeply affect people on an inner level in a way that elicits change in values, vocation, new vigor for things that are important. We, us, you, don't have the luxury of anything less. The stakes are too high for our planet and its people, and the time is too short. Less than 10 years, they say, for dramatic climate action. Day before yesterday for our friends in Malawi in southern Africa who are down to a meal a day as the once reliable monsoon rains have turned on them. And for the 100 girls on average being trafficked out of Nepal every day, any day's delay is a day of danger for them. We're working with our partners there in Nepal to stem that flow. And of course, keeping girls safe and in school is one of the most important things we can do, not only for them, but also to heal the earth. I'll be talking about all this stuff right over there just in a little while. And earth-wise, we've got trouble, my friends, right here in River City. You should have seen my son Daniel in the lead role in The Music Man. He was Harold Hill, I'm just saying. But we don't need a wandering minstrel spreading false alarms. We've got the real thing. Since that first Earth Day, we've emptied the seas of fish, half as many as 1970, 76% fewer freshwater fish. We've emptied the skies of birds, 3 billion fewer in North America. We've emptied our backyards of insects, 45% fewer than 40 years ago. We've increased CO2 emissions into the atmosphere by 90% since 1970. And I hate to break it to you, but it's only going to get worse unless we act big and soon. 1.2 billion climate refugees, they say, by the end of the century. Extinctions, not just diminishment, of thousands of species due to a myriad of factors. As Deuteronomy said millennia ago, and Led Zeppelin reiterated a couple decades ago, there are two paths we can go by. But in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. Maybe. There's the usual path, epitomized very well by the guy in our story today, colloquially known as Bigger Barnes. In many ways, he is an apt representative of what we in the rich world know as the good life. This is the life where things material play a key role. So much, for him, it was his harvest. So much so that he didn't really know what to even do with it. So much came in that season. Well, we are also certainly into things. Indeed, human-made materials now outweigh all other living things on the planet. Very nicely represented on the cover of your bulletin. And we like lots of everything. You name it, we like lots of it. The average American buying 60 items of clothing every year, while the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of our greenhouse gases, generates 60 million tons of plastic every year, and a huge amount of toxic chemicals used to grow cotton and dye fabric. And then there are the young women in the sweatshops, paid an average of 3% of the retail price of the item. But thank goodness for Goodwill helping us feel good about cleaning out our closets regularly. Never mind that half of those clothes end up being shipped to poor world markets where their cheap price undermines local tailors. I've got a photo for you. A woman in our network a couple of years ago said enough is enough and didn't buy a new item of clothing for a year, sending us what she might have spent to help women around the world prosper through our Give a Girl a Chance program. Back to Mr. Barnes. He had his storage problem in large part because he saw these crops as his harvest. He couldn't bring himself to think creatively about what else he might do with the bounty or who else might benefit. Again, ain't he us? A clear goal of our consumer economy is to keep us focused on ourselves, what makes our own life the most comfortable and the most convenient that it can be. Our cars actually may be the best example of this. In the USA, we love the autonomy, the flexibility, the convenience, the non-shared space of our personal vehicles, and have pretty much arranged our society accordingly, to the point that, except in some rare situations across the country, it's hard to exist without a vehicle. I've even heard from some of you since I've been here that even in California, getting around by bicycle can be tricky, as well as transit. Well, as you know, this isn't the case in other parts of the world. There, buses, micros, the beds of trucks, bicycles, foot, these are the modes of transportation in descending order of preference. Rarely do people have their own vehicle. Of course, there's a cost to our convenience. How many miles do we drive in the United States every day? That was one of the match game Earth Day questions that I had for all the high school classes I met with this past week here in your area. 8 billion miles a day in the United States of America. And on average, every mile we drive puts a pound of CO2, the number one greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. And every day across America, our vehicles kill 1 million creatures on our highways. Some of you may be walkers, bicyclists. You see this carnage up close and personal. My most recent heart-rending instance of this was a dead red fox on my bike ride out in Virginia. Honestly, it was heartbreaking. These are beautiful creatures. This is part of the reason there are 69% fewer living creatures on the earth than that first Earth Day. Twice as many humans, 69% fewer other living things. But another price of our car-centered conveyance is community. The people we don't meet other than the exchanging glares through the window at the intersection. Our learning tour groups take buses whenever we can when we're traveling abroad. That's how most of the people there are traveling. And honestly, that says something to the people that you're visiting, that you didn't hire a private vehicle or your own conveyance of some sort to get from your place to their place. They see that you're willing to take the same sort of transport that they are. I try to do it myself whenever it's available here when I'm traveling in the USA. Last fall, I was up visiting my son's family in Woodstock, Illinois. Yes, the movie set for the movie Groundhog Day. That's his sort of claim to fame, I guess you might say. On departure from their home to head back to wherever I was going next, my plan was to catch the bus, to connect to the bus, to connect with the bus, to catch the train, to catch the plane. That was my scheme that morning. Well, as I waited for the first bus, which was running a little late, The driver told me later that he'd gotten behind a tractor out in a rural area and wasn't north of town and wasn't sure if he could pass the tractor on a double line. I assured him I thought he could. But as I waited the few extra minutes for that first bus to arrive, I noticed one other person nearby at the train stop adjacent to the bus stop. He was a black man, maybe in his early 40s, holding a spherical can in a brown paper bag. At one point, he asked me the time, because he was waiting for that train. He was going north to see his mom up there somewhere, a couple of stops up the line. We chatted a bit. He told me his name was Radio. He used to live in Chicago. It was busy down there, and you'd often hear gunfire. Woodstock was more peaceful and quiet, he said. But the police here, they were strict about public drinking. Now, down in Chicago, the cops will go around the corner and share a drink with you. That's what he told me. Then he noticed my rollerboard and asked if I was going to the airport. Yes, I said, as a plane actually was going overhead. He looked up. Those planes get really high up, don't they? He said. I had the impression he'd never been on one. If you see God up there, tell him hi for me, would you? I said, sure. Then my bus came. I was glad it had been a little late. Expedience and convenience come at a cost. Just ask Mr. Barnes. One other thing he failed to consider as he tallied up all his bounty was the future. Take it easy, he told himself. You're set. Eat, drink, be merry, no worries about tomorrow, as if his present excesses could never exact a future cost. There's only one creature that buries its head in the sand, and it ain't the ostrich. Of course, in some ways, we can't be blamed. We've never been here before, where we find ourselves as a human community in relationship with God's earth around us. Just like Mr. Barnes, who had this unexpected and unprecedented bumper crop and had to figure out how to handle it, we are in his shoes in our current moment. We, too, as a human family, are in a new place. Always before, when we've run out of stuff or we've run out of room, we could sail over the horizon and take somebody else's. Or send our nets deeper into the seas. Or our drill bits further down into the flesh of Mother Earth. Or we could turn to a new invention or new discovery to get us over the hump and bail us out miraculously. Well, those days are past. For the first time, we are bumping up against limits regarding intake and output, overtaxing the Earth's bounty, overwhelming its ability to healthily absorb our waste, from plastic to carbon. Of course, we should have seen it coming. We extract 100 billion tons of bounty from the Earth every year and only recycle 8.6% of it. How long can that go on? And where did we think those 400 million tons of plastic we produce every year are going to end up? I guess it's now 8% of the body weight of many shorebirds. And plasticosis, they've got a name for it. Plasticosis is what they call it when it affects birds. I don't know what they're going to call it when it affects us, but it is. It's in our blood, it's in our lungs, it's everywhere inside us as well. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the fish we eat. But we missed it. Maybe too absorbed in our momentary merriment over the good light, over the good life that all this excess has made possible. Can we regroup? Realign ourselves with reality. Redirect our energies away from the good life to a better life. That really is the question of our time. J.B. McKinnon, in his book, The Day the World Stopped Shopping, is skeptical. He writes, we must stop shopping, yet we can't stop shopping. And later, when the pandemic shuttered the consumer economy and we told ourselves nothing would ever be the same again, history was quietly laughing. But he becomes strangely optimistic when near the end of his book he begins speaking about ways out and lifts up voluntary simplicity, which we in the Church of the Brethren know something about, as the most effective way of curbing our excesses and beginning to shift our course. Now, of course, it's not enough to rely on the virtuous actions of a few of us to move our society away from the consume at all costs with no thought for tomorrow, or Bigger Barnes' mantra of me, more, now. So like you, we at New Community Project work hard at the local, regional, and state levels to bring about some of the bigger changes that we need to really impact the shift, of course, of this big ship that we're on. And during the time over there, I'll tell you about our new collaboration with the Jane Goodall Institute to discover ways that the poor people in the world could continue to grow their food but not trash habitat and provide wildlife corridors in the process. So our personal choices and changes aren't sufficient, but they are necessary. It has to start somewhere. And the impetus will not come from the top. No one from the president on down is willing to ask anything of us in the service of saving our planet. Even with climate change about to have our lunch, no mention of the changes any of us could be making related to cars, cows, consumption, home heating and cooling. I'm sure it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the fossil fuel industry is donating $330 million a day toward their lobbying efforts of Congress, 27 times the amount of the green groups. So our role as the spark to start the fire, the flame to light the way, the flowers to shatter the stone is critical, and we cannot be bashful about it. I was up the Sky Ridge congregation in Kalamazoo, Michigan last weekend. And there in the audience, in the group, was one extremely environmentally conscious woman who expressed her reluctance to proselytize, to actively try to win others over to her point of view on these matters. Well, I just said to her and to the group, well, this is not your point of view for one thing. Not like some religious doctrine that you're trying to promote. It is a planetary emergency backed up by science and backed up by the melting glaciers and rising sea levels we see on our learning tours to Alaska and to the Delta of Myanmar. And secondly, many people around us instinctively know that what we are doing is not sustainable. It's not fair to our poor global neighbors or to other living creatures around us, and consigning our children to a perilous future. They just never hear anyone suggest that there's another way. They ever hear anyone suggest that changing our lifestyles a bit could give new promise to the future. We have so many young people coming to our sustainable living centers in Virginia and Vermont saying we never knew anything like this existed. I'm just telling you, it doesn't mean people aren't looking, that they aren't stepping forward. They don't know where to go or what to do, or who can lead the way. They might just find what we have to say and share appealing, even compelling. And these same people know down deep intuitively that life is more than things. Everybody who's got a moment to think, they don't want us thinking. They want us thinking neither to the left nor to the right, but on the treadmill with the television up ahead, running in place but going nowhere. That's where they want us in this consumer. Our job is to shut up and shop, not to think. But once we think, once we plant that seed, that idea, they realize they've been looking for love in all the wrong places. So our message of finding meaning in something other than materialism may just resonate with them. Now, I have to say that the Sky Ridge congregation itself was not shy about promoting our One Earth, One Chance Earth Day weekend retreat and experience. They got it on community calendars, sent out promos far and wide through all their social media, broadcasted on Zoom. Some of you might have tuned in, I don't know. And it arranged a couple of interviews for me. Including with the local Fox affiliate in their larger Grand Rapids market. Now, I guess this particular station is not as foxy as some of the others. And only grudgingly follows the party line on certain issues. So I called in at 7:20, Saturday before last morning, found out at that point it was going to be a live interview, changed my shirt, and got ready for the 7:44 start time. Laura, the woman who interviewed me, seemed actually interested. You can tell it on people's faces. She seemed actually interested, and toward the end, earnestly asked why more wasn't being done to address the list of problems that I had enumerated. Then it was over, 4 minutes, rapid fire as you can imagine. But while I was still connected on Zoom, another voice came on. It was one of the technicians who had worked the segment from behind the scenes. He told me how much he had appreciated what I said and the passion I had for this topic, and that he'd already checked out our website and sent in a sign-up form for our mailings. That was close to the highlight of the weekend for me, and reminded me that this is a ministry we have. To put ourselves out there in such a way that it gives others permission to step forward themselves, knowing that they are not alone in both their fears and their hopes about the future of our earth. The paths lay open before us. Me more now, or us enough tomorrow. Jesus' call is clear, as are the needs of our neighbors, other living things, and generations yet to come. Walk boldly past the good life into that better life God wishes for us and for this world. Amen.
We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.